Part 1. Rain fell like needles piercing the tin roof of the old house, creating a discordant symphony I had grown accustomed to over the past 3 years. Each drop was like a ghostly whisper infiltrating every crack of my soul on this dark night. I sat by the window, gazing out at the desolate garden behind the house, where the shadows of trees swayed like skeletal hands reaching out to pull me away. "Kate, what are you doing?" Luke's voice echoed from the kitchen, mixing with the scent of strong black coffee and cigarette smoke, a familiar blend of sleepless nights. "Nothing," I replied, but my eyes remained fixed on the dismal gray cellar door in the backyard corner. That door always filled me with unease, as if something lurked behind it, breathing heavily in the darkness. Streaks of reddish-brown rust spread across its metallic surface like dried blood, and every gust of wind made it creak ominously. I am Kate Morrison, 32 years old. I was once a successful architect in Manhattan before my life was completely upended. 3 years ago, when my father, Dr. Richard Blackwell, a leading neuroscientist, died in a strange accident, I inherited this old house in the Pine Barrens suburbs of New Jersey. It was where my father spent his final years researching anomalous phenomena in human perception, a topic he always kept secret. Luke, my husband, had tried to convince me to sell the house and return to the city. He's an investigative journalist with a keen instinct for the unusual. But something about this house held me back, as if it contained secrets my father hadn't told me. "Mommy, I can't sleep." Grace, my 5-year-old daughter, made me turn around. She stood at the living room doorway, clutching her worn brown teddy bear. Her clear blue eyes shone with worry. "Go to sleep, sweetie. Mommy will be up soon," I said, forcing a smile, trying to hide the rising anxiety within me. "But I hear strange noises downstairs," Grace said, her voice trembling like someone scratching at a door. My heart pounded. "Scratching?" I looked towards the cellar door through the window, and for a fleeting moment, I swore I saw something move in the darkness beyond. "Luke," I called out louder, my voice shaking. His heavy footsteps creaked on the old wooden floor as he walked towards me. Luke Martinez, 34, of Latino descent with dark hair tied in a ponytail and sharp brown eyes. He could read my mood with just a glance. "What's wrong?" Luke placed a hand on my shoulder, his gaze following mine out the window. Grace said she heard strange noises, and I hesitated, unsure how to explain this eerie feeling to him. "I feel like something's wrong with the cellar door." Luke frowned, his eyes growing serious. In 3 years, we had never been down to the basement. The door had always been tightly locked, and my father had repeatedly warned that no one should ever go down there. He said it was his private lab, containing dangerous equipment. Suddenly, my phone vibrated jarringly in the night silence. The screen flared, displaying an urgent message from an unknown number. "Emergency alert. Do not go down to the basement. Stay above ground. Your life depends on this." "What is it?" Luke leaned down to look at the screen, his face pale. Before I could answer, the lights in the house flickered as if someone was messing with the switch. The faint yellow bulbs wavered, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. And then, as clear as day, we heard scratching from below. Not human scratching. This sound was sharper, more metallic, like claws raking against concrete. Each scratch was long, slow, deliberate, as if something on the other side was patiently testing the door's durability. "Damn it," Luke muttered, heading towards the back door. "It could be a bear or some wild animal." "No," I grabbed his sleeve. "Don't go out there." "Kate, you're being paranoid," Luke said gently, but I could hear the worry in his voice. "It might just be." The scratching suddenly stopped. The abrupt silence was more terrifying than the noise itself. I felt every cell in my body tremble with fear. And then we saw it. From under the cellar door, a trail of thick, black, tar-like liquid oozed out. It spread across the cement floor like blood, but there was something unnatural about how it moved. Too conscious. Too purposeful. Grace suddenly let out a piercing shriek from behind us. "Mommy, Mommy, there's a man at the window." I spun around, my heart pounding as if it would burst from my chest. Through the living room window, in the dim yellow light of a distant street lamp, I faintly saw a tall, slender figure standing motionless in the yard. Its shape was indescribably strange, too tall, too thin, with abnormally long limbs like withered branches. Luke, my voice was just a whisper. He had seen it too. Luke's face was ashen. His hands trembled as he reached for the light switch, plunging the house into darkness. "Go upstairs now," Luke commanded in a low, decisive voice. "Take Grace, I'll check around." "No, we go together." I clung to his arm. But when we looked out the window again, the figure had vanished, leaving only tree shadows swaying in the wind and the gentle patter of rain on the roof. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was a call from an unknown number. With trembling hands, I answered. "Hello." On the other end, there was only static, but mixed in with it, I heard a hoarse voice as if echoing from afar. "Kate, my daughter." My blood ran cold. It was my father's voice, but my father had been dead for 3 years. "Don't let them up. Don't let them out of the cellar. You must protect Grace." The call abruptly disconnected. I stood there, holding the phone, my hand trembling like a leaf. Luke looked at me with worried eyes. "Who was that?" I think it was my father." My voice choked. "Kate, your father is gone. You're too stressed." But I knew what I had heard, and I knew there was something in that basement. Something my father had tried to hide for years. Grace crawled into my lap, shaking with fright. I held her tight, feeling the small warmth of her body against the chilling cold that enveloped the house. "Luke, we have to get out of here." "You're right, we'll go to a hotel tonight." But as Luke moved towards the front door to get the car keys, the scratching started again. This time, not just from the basement, but from all around the house, as if a whole swarm of things were trying to get in. I looked down at my phone and saw a new message pop up. "Forget the escape. They know where you are." And then, just like that, all the lights in the house went out. In the absolute darkness, there was only our ragged breathing and the increasingly frantic scratching. Grace sobbed in my arms, and I knew this was just the beginning of a nightmare my father had tried to hide from the world. I thought of my father's last warning, "Don't let them out of the cellar." And I understood that perhaps I was too late. Maybe that cellar door was never designed to keep something out, but to keep something in. And now, it had been released. In the darkness, I clutched Luke's and Grace's hands, knowing our fight for survival had just begun. I only hoped my father had left enough clues for us to understand what we were facing and find a way to destroy it before it destroyed us. Part 2. We fled the house in the dark like criminals on the run. I held Grace tight. She shivered with cold and fear while Luke fumbled with the car door, his hands shaking. Our old Honda Civic, a humble relic from our city life, was now our only means of escape from this haunted house. "Hurry, Kate," Luke urged as he started the engine. It sputtered a few times before catching, and I silently prayed it wouldn't stall now. As we backed out of the driveway, I glanced back through the rear window. My father's house loomed like a black mass in the night, only the faint glow of distant streetlights reflecting on its dark windows, but something made me shiver. I had the feeling that many eyes were watching us from inside the house. "Where are we going?" I asked as Luke drove onto the main road. "The nearest hotel, or maybe to Jamie and Rachel's place in Trenton. They'll let us stay the night." Jamie Rodriguez and Rachel Thompson were our closest friends from college. Jamie was a computer engineer, and Rachel was a psychiatrist. They were the perfect pair, one who could fix machines, one who could mend souls. If anyone could help us understand what was happening, it would be them. But to get to Trenton, we had to drive through the Pine Barrens, a vast wilderness with millions of pine trees and rumored strange creatures lurking within. My father used to tell me about the Pine Barrens, about the local legends, and why he chose this specific house for his research. "Areas with weak magnetic fields," he'd said, "where the boundary between reality and other dimensions becomes thin." At the time, I thought he was joking. Now, I wasn't so sure. The rain began to fall heavier, the drops striking the windshield like tiny bullets. Luke switched on the wipers, but they only made visibility worse. Our headlights only illuminated a few meters ahead in the thick fog that enveloped the road. "Mommy, I'm scared," Grace whimpered from the back seat. "It's okay, my love. We're just going to visit Uncle Jamie and Aunt Rachel." I tried to keep my voice normal, but inside I was in a panic. My phone suddenly vibrated. A new emergency message appeared on the screen. "Stay on the ground. Do not evacuate. Please comply." Accompanying the message was a strange image, an old gas mask with yellow stains as if it had been soaked in acid. "What is it?" Luke glanced over. Another emergency message, this time telling us not to evacuate, from an unknown number the same as before. Luke frowned. It could be someone's prank or... He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he was thinking. Someone might be watching us. We might not be as safe as we thought. The road through the Pine Barrens at night was like a journey through hell. Tall pine trees stood like dark giants on either side of the road, their branches interwoven to form a dense canopy that blocked out the sky. The wind whistling through the forest created strange sounds, rustling like whispers, the trees rubbing against each other like groans. "How's the GPS?" I asked, realizing we'd been driving for a while without seeing any road signs. Luke looked down at the navigation screen on his phone, his face pale. "It's showing an error, no satellite signal." "So, could we be lost?" "I know this road, just go straight and turn right at the next intersection." But as we continued to drive, the road seemed endless. Identical pine trees repeated themselves as if in a time loop, and no intersection appeared. "Luke, are we going the right way?" I'm not sure anymore." My phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a message, but a call. The screen displayed a completely unfamiliar number, starting with an area code I'd never seen. "Hello." On the other end was terrible static, mixed with strange sounds like bones clacking together, scratching, and in the distance, someone gasping. "Kate," a hoarse voice echoed from the static. Not my father's voice this time, but a completely alien one, as if from another dimension. "They're out. They're looking for you." The call disconnected abruptly. "Damn it," I threw the phone onto the car floor. "What? Who was it?" "I don't know. Someone just keeps calling, and..." My words were cut short as Luke slammed on the brakes. The car skidded on the wet road and stopped in the middle of it. In front of us, in the dim headlights, something was standing. At first, I thought it was a fallen tree blocking the road. But looking closer, I realized it wasn't a tree. It was a creature. It was about 2 meters tall, but its shape was utterly unlike a human. Its body seemed to be assembled from dry branches and old bones, with strange joints bending at unnatural angles. What I initially thought were branches turned out to be abnormally long arms and legs, with hands like small tree branches ending in long, curved claws. But the most terrifying thing was its head, or what could be called a head. It was like a dull white skull with deep, hollow eye sockets. No light emanated from them, but I felt as if it was staring directly at us. "Oh my God," Luke gasped. "What is that?" The creature stood motionless in the middle of the road like a dead tree. But then it began to move. Not walking, but writhing and twisting in ways no human skeleton could. Sounds emanated from its body like dry wood snapping and bones grinding together. Back up now," I screamed. But as Luke shifted into reverse, there was a loud thud from behind the car. We turned and saw another creature standing right behind us. Its claws were raking against the trunk, leaving deep scratches on the metal. "We're surrounded," Luke said, his voice trembling. Grace began to cry, and I hugged her tightly. "It's okay, sweetie, it's okay." But I knew we weren't safe at all. The creature in front began to advance towards the car. Each step it took produced a terrifying sound, like bones crumbling. As it drew closer to the headlights, I could see its horrifying details more clearly. Its body wasn't made of bone and branches as I thought, but from another strange material, a pale, grayish-white, slimy and sticky substance. And from the cracks in its body, a black, tar-like liquid slowly oozed out. "Luke, drive. Ram through it if you have to." "I will." Luke stomped on the accelerator and the car lunged forward straight at the creature. At first, I thought we would hit it, but the creature moved with incredible speed. It leaped high, its long limbs stretching out, and landed right on the car roof with a heavy thud. Its claws began scratching the roof, the metal-on-metal sound ear-splitting. Then one of its long, branch-like arms reached down to the driver's side window. Its strange fingers tapped on the glass. "It's trying to get in," Luke yelled. He frantically wrenched the steering wheel, trying to shake the creature off the car, but it clung on. And then I heard the most terrifying sound, the sound of glass cracking. The window next to Luke began to shatter under the pressure of its claws. My phone vibrated again, a new message. They found you. There's no escape. And then another image, a short video taken from above, perhaps from a satellite or a drone. In the video, I could see our car in the middle of the dark road, surrounded by many similar creatures. They looked like a giant swarm of spiders crawling towards the car from all directions. "Kate, look," Luke pointed ahead. In the headlights, I saw that the road ahead was completely blocked by these creatures. They stood in rows like soldiers, their bizarre bodies swaying in the wind like dead trees. "Turn off the lights," I screamed. "Turn off all the lights in the engine." "What?" "Just do it. Maybe they're attracted to light or sound." Luke turned off the headlights and shifted the car into neutral. The car coasted freely down the sloping road in absolute darkness. The creature on the roof seemed confused, its scratching sounds lessened. We sat in silence, holding our breath, clinging to each other. Grace had stopped crying, but I felt her body tremble incessantly. Through the car windows, I could see tall figures moving around the car. They seemed to be searching for something, their dull white skulls turning back and forth in the darkness. And then, slowly, they began to leave. One by one, they vanished into the pine forest, leaving only the sound of the wind and the gentle rain. After waiting for another 10 minutes without hearing anything, Luke cautiously restarted the car. The headlights came on, illuminating the empty road ahead. "They're gone," he whispered. But as we continued to drive, I looked into the rearview mirror and saw glowing eyes in the dark pine forest, watching us from afar. My phone vibrated one last time. "You cannot run from what you have inherited." I looked at Luke, and in the dim light from the car's dashboard, I saw that he was just as terrified as I was. We weren't just running from a haunted house. We were running from something larger, more terrifying, and directly connected to my family. "What did you do, Dad?" I whispered into the darkness, but the darkness offered no reply. It merely swallowed my question, leaving only an ominous silence, broken only by the car engine and the ceaseless rain on the windshield. Part 3. I woke up in the cold, stark light of fluorescent lamps, feeling like I had just stepped from one heavy nightmare into another. My eyes slowly opened, adjusting to the flickering light from the tube bulbs on the ceiling. The first sound that registered was the steady beep 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 of a heart monitor, like a tiny chainsaw slowly cutting into my heart. "Hello, Ms. Morrison?" A warm but weary voice echoed from the right. I turned my head and saw a middle-aged doctor with thinning gray hair and faded blue eyes. He wore a white lab coat, stained yellow at the cuffs, and a name tag on his chest read, Dr. Marcus Henley. "Where am I?" My voice was raspy like sandpaper. "St. Mary's Hospital in Lakewood. Your husband brought you here after you collapsed in the car. Do you remember anything about what happened?" Memories flooded back like a tidal wave. The bizarre creatures on the road, the claws raking the car window, the ghostly voice from the phone. I tried to sit up, but my body felt crushed by an invisible boulder. "Luke, Grace, where are they?" "They're in the waiting room. You don't need to worry, but we need to talk about your condition." Dr. Henley pulled up a chair and sat beside my bed. The fluorescent light illuminated his face, casting deep shadows under his eyes, making him look like a ghost in a lab coat. "You have some rather peculiar wounds on your shoulder and neck. They look like animal bites, but not like any species I've ever seen." He paused, observing my reaction. "Do you remember being attacked by anything?" I thought back to the moment the creature on the car roof reached its claws down, and suddenly I felt a sharp pain from my left shoulder. I looked down and saw a large bandage covering my collarbone area. I don't remember clearly," I lied. How could I explain bizarre creatures without being committed to a psychiatric ward? "Kate," Dr. Henley leaned towards me, his voice growing more serious. "Are you using any stimulants, cocaine, amphetamines, or any psychotropic drugs?" "No, never." "Because your blood tests show some strange substances we can't identify. And," he hesitated, "your wounds show signs of infection with a type of bacteria never before recorded." My blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "It means you need to stay here for us to monitor you for at least a few days." "No," I tried to sit up, ignoring the sharp pain. "I need to go home. My daughter needs me." Dr. Henley placed a hand on my shoulder, and I flinched at the coldness of his skin through his rubber gloves. Kate, you need to trust me. Your condition is very serious if not treated properly. He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. I looked around the hospital room. The white walls had faded to a sickly cream, with mottled brown stains like old blood. Near the corner was an old metal cabinet with rust spots, and next to the bed was a small table with a water pitcher and a cracked plastic cup. From the bed next to mine, I heard the faint groan of another patient. I turned my head and saw an old man with thinning gray hair lying in a fetal position, his mouth opening and closing like a gasping fish. "How is he?" I asked. Dr. Henley looked in the direction I pointed and shook his head. "Mr. Morrison was admitted at the same time as you. He also has similar wounds, but in a more advanced stage." Morrison, was that my family name? Just a coincidence? "Doctor," I called as Dr. Henley prepared to leave. "What's his full name?" "Richard Morrison. Why?" The world around me suddenly spun. Richard Morrison. That was my father's real name before he changed it to Richard Blackwell for his research work, but my father had been dead for 3 years. How could? "Are you all right, Kate?" Dr. Henley asked, seeing my pale face. I need to see my husband." "You need to rest. I'll allow him to visit after you've taken your medication." He left the room, leaving me alone with the sound of the monitor and the groans from the adjacent bed. I tried to get a clearer look at the man called Richard Morrison, but the light in the room was too dim and he was facing the wall. Suddenly, the TV screen hanging on the wall flickered to life, even though no one was holding a remote. At first, it was just black and white static, but then an image began to appear. It was a man's face. Initially unclear, but gradually the features sharpened. I gasped, realizing it was my father, but not the father I remembered. His eyes were bloodshot red like embers, and his smile was a grotesque, distorted grin. "Kate," his voice echoed from the TV speakers, but something was wrong. The voice sounded distorted, as if coming from underwater and full of malice. "My daughter," my father whispered, though I knew it couldn't be him. "You let them out. You failed." The image on the screen began to warp. My father's face seemed to melt. "Now they will spread, and Grace will be the first." "No," I screamed, jolting upright in bed. The TV screen suddenly went black, returning to silence. But in that silence, I heard a new sound, a whisper from the bed next to mine. They're coming for you." I turned and saw the man called Richard Morrison facing me. His face was completely different from my father's, but his eyes were identical to the ones I had seen on the TV screen. "Who are you?" I asked, trembling. "I am the one who tried to warn you, but it was too late." He coughed, and thick black blood spewed from his mouth. "The cellar door. Why didn't you listen to me?" "I didn't open the cellar door." "No, but you left the house and they followed you. Now they are everywhere." He stretched a bony hand towards me. His skin had wounds identical to mine, but far more severe. The black, tar-like liquid oozed from these wounds, forming dark stains on the white bedsheets. "Kate," Dr. Henley entered the room, followed by a nurse in green scrubs. "Did you hear anything? Other patients complained about shouting." I looked back at the bed next to mine. It was empty, the sheets clean as if no one had ever lain there. "Where's Mr. Morrison?" Dr. Henley and the nurse exchanged a strange look. "Kate, there's no patient named Morrison here. You've been in this room alone from the start." "But he just talked to me. He was right there." I pointed to the empty bed. "You're hallucinating," the nurse said gently. "It's a common side effect of the pain medication." But I knew this wasn't a hallucination. And when I looked closely at the clean bedsheet, I could see faint black stains where his knees would have been. Dr. Henley sat down beside my bed again. "Kate, I need to be honest with you. Your infection is progressing very rapidly. We've tried many antibiotics, but they're not working." "What does that mean?" He looked at me with eyes full of pity. "If we can't control the infection within the next 24 hours, he hesitated, "I'm afraid you won't make it." My blood ran cold. I'm going to die? And what about Grace? She would face those monstrous creatures alone. I need to see my husband now. "Kate, you need to rest right now." Dr. Henley sighed and nodded to the nurse. "All right, but only for 5 minutes." As they left, I tried to examine the wound on my shoulder. I peeled back a corner of the bandage and saw something that made me want to vomit. The wound wasn't just infected, it was transforming. The skin around it had turned dark gray, and from the wound, black, root-like tendrils spread beneath my skin, forming a complex network heading towards my heart. The black liquid oozing from the wound smelled like metal and something rotting. I touched it and felt it warm and strangely alive, as if it had its own consciousness. Luke entered the room, his face filled with worry. "How are you?" "You have to get me out of here right now." "Kate, the doctor said you need treatment." "Luke, listen to me." I grabbed his sleeve. "I'll die if I stay here, and Grace will be in danger too. Those creatures, they're not just hallucinations. They're real, and they're trying to get to Grace." Luke looked at me with confusion. "What are you talking about?" "I don't have time to explain. Do you believe me?" He was silent for a moment, then nodded. "I believe you." "Then help me get out of here. Where's Grace?" "She's sleeping in the waiting room with Rachel. Jamie has arrived and is talking to the doctors." Rachel and Jamie. I felt a slight wave of relief knowing our best friends were here. I started pulling the monitor wires off my body. Immediately, the machine began beeping wildly. "What are you doing?" "Help me off the bed. We need to leave before they come back." Luke hesitated for a moment, then helped me to my feet. My legs were shaky, and my head was spinning, but I forced myself to move. Through the hospital room window, I could see the night sky and the faint streetlights outside. And in that light, I saw tall, slender figures moving among the trees in the hospital yard. "They found me," I whispered to Luke. "They're out there." He looked in the direction I pointed, his face pale. "Oh my God, how do we get out of here?" Before I could answer, the lights in the hospital room began to flicker, and from the hospital intercom, a familiar voice echoed. My father's voice, but distorted and full of malice. "Kate, you cannot escape my legacy. You will become one of them as I have become." I knew we had run out of time. Whatever was infecting my body, whatever those creatures were, we had to get out of here now. For Grace, for her future, and perhaps for the future of humanity. Part 4. In a desperate act, I yanked the IV line from my arm, blood dripping onto the floor, forming vivid red streaks on the white tiles. Luke frantically supported me as my legs weakened, my body trembling from shock and blood loss. "Are you crazy?" he whispered, but in his voice, there was the resolve of someone who now completely believed me. "We have to go now," I said through gritted teeth, fighting against the pain. "Those creatures, they can smell the infection on me. They'll follow." From the hospital corridor, the hurried footsteps of nurses approached our room. The incessant beep-beep-beep of the alarm still shrieked, coupled with the intercom announcing a missing patient from room 314. Luke quickly helped me off the bed and towards the window. "We can't go through the main door, too many people." I looked down from the window 3 floors above ground, but below was a metal awning of the emergency area. "If we can climb down onto the awning." "You're injured, Kate, you can't." "I have to," I cut him off, my eyes fixed on the hospital garden outside, where tall, slender figures moved back and forth among the trees. "They're patrolling, Luke. They're surrounding the hospital, if we don't go now." The sounds from the corridor grew closer. Quick footsteps, hushed voices, and the urgent alarm. Luke opened the window. The cold night wind rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and something else, the smell of metal mixed with decay. "What's that smell?" Luke frowned. "The creatures," I whispered. "They smell like rotting flesh and rusty metal." Luke climbed out the window first, then helped me. The night wind cut into me like cold knives, making the wound on my shoulder ache fiercely. But I forced myself to endure it, for Grace. We carefully climbed down onto the awning, the metal creaking under our weight. I felt a warm liquid trickle down my arm. Blood from the wound was flowing more heavily. But it wasn't just blood. There was also the thick, black, tar-like liquid with a terrible smell. "Kate," Luke pointed to my arm, his face pale when he saw the black liquid. "Don't look at it," I said quickly. "We need to get to Grace and get out of here." We jumped to the ground from the awning. The impact rattled my body, the pain from my shoulder spreading throughout my body like lightning. But I had no time for pain. Through the glass of the emergency waiting room, I saw Grace sleeping soundly in Rachel's arms. My friend, a tall black woman with short braids and deep brown eyes, gently stroked her hair. Rachel Thompson, 33, a psychiatrist who had helped me through my depression after my father's death. If anyone could understand my mental state right now, it was her. Jamie Rodriguez sat nearby, typing on his phone with a worried expression. This guy, with his long dark hair and bright blue eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses, was a computer genius who could hack into any system. If the mysterious messages had a technological origin, Jamie would find it. Luke and I avoided the streetlights and slipped into the back entrance of the emergency area. The back corridor was dim and deserted, with only the distant hum of medical machinery. "I'll go get the car," Luke whispered. "You wait here and get ready to take Grace." But as Luke prepared to leave, I grabbed his arm. "Do you feel like we're being watched?" Luke stopped, listening. In the silence of the night, we heard a strange sound, like bones clacking together, very faint but steady. Tick-tock, like a clock made of human bones. "They're here," I whispered. From the dark corner of the parking lot, a tall, slender figure emerged. Under the streetlights, I could see the creature we had encountered on the road more clearly. Its body seemed to be made of dry branches and old bones, but there was something more terrifying than I remembered. Its skin, if it could be called skin, was grayish-white like decaying flesh, but damp and slimy like a frog's. From the cracks in its body, thick, black, tar-like liquid slowly oozed out, dripping onto the ground and forming spreading stains. But the most frightening thing was the way it moved. Unlike before, this time it moved purposefully, as if it knew exactly where we were. Its dull white skull turned towards us, and though it had no eyes, I felt as if it was staring directly into my soul. "Run," Luke whispered. We dashed into the hospital, but not towards the waiting room. Instead, we ran towards the emergency exit at the end of the corridor. Behind us, the clacking of bones grew louder and closer. When we pushed open the emergency exit, the alarm shrieked again. But it didn't matter now. We rushed out into the dark Pine Barrens. The pine forest welcomed us like a giant maw. The towering trees formed a dense canopy that obscured the moon and stars, plunging everything into near-absolute darkness. Only the faint beam of Luke's phone flashlight illuminated our way. "Where are we going?" I asked as we stumbled through clumps of trees and ferns. "There's an old cabin about a mile from here," Luke said, his voice trembling with cold and fear. "My dad used to take me hunting there when I was a kid. We can hide there until morning." But as we ventured deeper into the forest, I realized we weren't alone. The tick-tock echoed from all around, not just one, but many, as if an entire swarm of creatures was surrounding us. "Luke's," I whispered, "they're everywhere." He stopped and turned off the flashlight. In the absolute darkness, we stood motionless, holding our breath, listening. The tick-tock seemed to come from every direction: front, back, left, right. We were surrounded. Suddenly, a branch snapped directly above us. I looked up and saw a giant figure crawling on the branches like a monstrous spider. In the dim light filtering through the canopy, I could see its long limbs bending at unnatural angles to hold its body on the tree. "Run," Luke whispered. We dashed through the pine forest, no longer trying to be silent. Our footsteps crunching on dry leaves and snapping twigs echoed in the night, combined with our ragged breathing and pounding hearts. Behind us, the tick-tock became a horrifying symphony as more and more creatures joined the chase. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear them moving through the trees, the snapping of branches, the rustling of dry leaves, and the strange sound of metal grinding together. The wound on my shoulder ached more and more, bleeding profusely. The black liquid also oozed out more, creating a perfect trail for our pursuers. I began to feel dizzy and weak. "Kate, can you still run?" Luke asked, seeing me stumble. "I have to," I replied through gritted teeth, but suddenly my foot caught on a tree root and I fell to the ground. The pain from my shoulder spread throughout my body like lightning, and I couldn't suppress a groan. Luke turned back to help me up, but then we heard the tick-tock very close, right behind the nearest pine trees. "They found us," I whispered. From the darkness, two dull white skulls emerged, glowing eerily in the night. Two creatures stepped out from behind the trees. Their bizarre bodies moved in a way unlike any creature on Earth. Luke grabbed a broken branch as a weapon. "Stay behind me, Kate." but I knew a branch would be useless against these things. They weren't normal animals. They were something else, something my father had researched and tried to keep hidden. Suddenly, memories of my father coming home smelling of strange chemicals and with peculiar wounds on his hands flooded back. He always said it was due to laboratory accidents, but now I understood. He had been exposed to these creatures for a long time. My father once mentioned a safe location, I said quickly. An old underground bunker deep in the forest, if we can get there. Where? Follow the stream. Dad said always follow the water when in danger. I heard the gentle gurgle of water in the distance. Luke heard it too and nodded. We began to move towards that sound, trying to keep our distance from the two creatures that were stalking us. But as we approached the stream, I realized something was wrong. The surrounding pine trees looked different. Their bark was dark gray instead of brown, and from the cracks in the bark, the same black liquid as in my wound was oozing out. Luke, the trees here. I know, they're infected with something. Not just infected, they're transformed. And I began to understand what my father had been researching. He wasn't just researching strange creatures. He was researching a form of infection that could transform both animals and plants. And now, it was transforming me. We reached the stream bank of black, murky water flowing silently through the pine forest. But the water smelled exactly like the liquid from my wound, metal and decay. This water is contaminated, Luke said. This whole area is contaminated. I realized my father had failed. He had failed to stop it. The tick-tock grew closer. We had to keep moving. But as we walked along the stream, I began to see things that made me want to vomit. Animal carcasses, or what used to be animal carcasses, lay scattered along the bank, but they had been grotesquely transformed. A deer with abnormally long antlers like black branches, its eyes hollow sockets. A bear with long, slender limbs like a spider's, its skin grayish-white and slimy. "What is this?" Luke whispered in horror. "My father's legacy," I replied bitterly. He found something and tried to study it, but it escaped. And suddenly, I understood why my father had warned no one to enter the basement. It wasn't to protect us from what was in there, but to protect the world from what he had created. But now it was too late. They were out, and they were spreading. I looked down at my hand and saw black streaks spreading up my arm beneath my skin like ghostly roots. I was becoming one of them. And if I didn't find a way to stop this process, Grace would be next. Part 5. In the darkness of the pine forest, death manifested in the form of creatures that the human mind could barely conceive. Luke and I stood motionless by the bank of the murky black stream, listening as the clacking of bones grew closer from all directions. There was no escape route, no place left to run. "Kate," Luke whispered, his voice trembling, "how many are there?" I tried to count the glowing eyes in the darkness, eerie points of light like hellish fireflies. 5, 7, 10. I lost count as they continued to emerge from behind the colossal pine trees. "Too many," I replied, feeling the black liquid from the wound on my shoulder trickle down my arm. The pain was no longer a sharp ache. Instead, it was a spreading numbness, as if a part of my body was slowly dying. Suddenly, one of them stepped out of the darkness. In the dim light from Luke's phone, I could see its horrifying nature more clearly. This creature was nearly 3 meters tall. Its body seemed to be assembled from sections of dull white bone and dry branches, but it wasn't crudely put together. They were connected by a complex network of thin, gray membranes, like bat wings, but transparent and viscous. Through these membranes, I could see a thick, black, oil-like liquid circulating, like the circulatory system of a living organism. Its arms were actually human arm bones, but unnaturally elongated and ending in 5-fingered hands like tree branches. Each finger terminated in a curved, razor-sharp claw, from which drops of black liquid dripped onto the ground, leaving corrosive marks on the dry leaves. But the most terrifying thing was its head, or what might be called a head. It was a human skull, but stretched and distorted. The lower jaw was abnormally long, filled with needle-sharp teeth. Its 2 eye sockets were deep and hollow, with no eyeballs. Instead, tiny glowing embers moved back and forth as if scanning for something. "Oh my God," Luke whispered as the creature began to make a sound, not a growl or a shriek. The sound it emitted was like dry wood splintering combined with metal grinding, forming a gruesome symphony that made my teeth clench. And mixed within it, I heard something that froze my blood, a whisper in a human voice. "Kate, Kate, come home to us, come home to family." "It knows your name," Luke said, his voice full of horror. The creature advanced towards us with strange steps, not walking, but seeming to glide over the ground. Its lower limbs, sections of bone connected by grotesque joints, moved at angles no human skeleton could achieve. "Luke, find something to hit it with," I said quickly, my eyes scanning for a weapon. Nearby, on the stream bank, I saw a rusty iron bar, possibly part of a collapsed old bridge. It was about a meter long, pointed at one end and covered in rust. I lunged and grabbed the bar, feeling the coldness of the metal through my sweaty hands. It was heavier than I thought, but well-balanced, like a makeshift spear. "What are you doing?" Luke yelled, seeing me turn towards the creature. "What I should have done a long time ago," I replied, feeling a surge of anger from deep within me. Anger at my father for leaving this horrifying legacy. Anger at myself for not being strong enough to protect my family. And anger at these monstrous creatures for threatening Grace. The first creature lunged with incredible speed. Its long arms extended like demonic branches, claws slicing through the air with a piercing hiss. I stepped back and thrust the iron bar straight into its torso. The sound as the bar pierced the creature was like glass shattering combined with flesh being torn. Black liquid spurted from the wound like blood, but it smelled of acid and metal. A few drops splashed onto my hand, and I felt my skin corrode and smoke, but the creature did not die. Instead, it let out a gruesome scream, the voices of many different people shrieking simultaneously. It grabbed the iron bar and tried to pull it out, but I held on tight and twisted forcefully. Its long, branch-like fingers dug into my shoulder and neck, its claws tearing at my flesh and leaving deep wounds. I felt warm blood trickle down my back, mixing with the black liquid from the old wound. "Kate," Luke rushed forward with a large piece of wood and struck the creature's head. The blow produced a terrible sound like bones shattering, and the creature's skull cracked into many pieces. But instead of collapsing, the creature merely turned its head towards Luke. From the cracks in its skull, black liquid poured out like spider silk, slowly repairing the fractures. "They can regenerate," I yelled. Suddenly, two other creatures appeared from the darkness. One was smaller but faster, moving like a giant spider on its long limbs. The other was the largest of all I had seen, nearly 4 meters tall with a body that looked like human ribs fused together. We were surrounded. The smaller creature lunged at Luke first. He tried to hit it with the piece of wood, but it was too fast. Its claws raked across his chest, tearing his shirt and leaving deep bloody gashes on his skin. Luke cried out and fell, blood gushing from his wounds. The creature prepared to attack again. But I ripped the iron bar from the first creature's body and thrust it straight into the back of the creature attacking Luke. This time, I plunged it deeper, piercing its body completely. The creature let out a shriek and turned to attack me. Its claws raked my face, leaving 3 deep scratches from my forehead to my cheek. Blood ran into my eyes, blurring my vision, but I didn't release the iron bar. Instead, I twisted it as if screwing in a bolt, destroying the creature's internal organs from within. Black liquid gushed out like a burst pipe. The creature convulsed a few times, then went limp. Its body disintegrated into fragments of bone and thin membranes. But the largest creature remained, and now it was enraged. It lunged at me with incredible speed. Its enormous arms reached out as if to embrace me in death. I rolled to the side, avoiding the initial attack, but one of its claws still caught my back. The pain was like lightning. I felt my flesh tear and warm blood stream down my waist. But worse, I felt something else, as if the venom from the claw was spreading into my body. My legs felt weak, and I collapsed into the mud by the stream bank, the iron bar flying from my hand. The large creature stood over me, its abnormally long lower jaw opening to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Now you will join our family," it said in my father's voice, but distorted and full of malice. It bent down, its breath smelling of rotting flesh and chemicals. I could see black maggots squirming between its teeth. But just then, Luke, despite his severe injuries, lunged and struck the creature's head with a piece of wood. The blow wasn't strong enough to cause serious damage, but it was enough to distract it. I seized the opportunity to roll away and grab the iron bar. With a final effort, I stood up and plunged the iron bar straight into the creature's left eye socket. The bar pierced through the socket and out the back of its head. Black and white liquid, possibly brain matter or something similar, gushed from the wound. The creature let out a final shriek, no longer in my father's voice, but a pure sound of death. It convulsed violently, its body beginning to disintegrate. Sections of bone clattered to the ground, thin membranes floated away like smoke, and black liquid soaked into the earth, leaving only a dark stain of contamination. I collapsed beside Luke. We were both gasping for breath and losing a lot of blood, but we had survived. They're dead, Luke asked with difficulty. I looked around. The other creatures had vanished into the pine forest's darkness. Perhaps they had left when they saw we could fight back, or perhaps they were planning their next attack. For now, I replied. I looked down at my body. The wound on my shoulder had spread. The black streaks now extended to my neck and chest. My skin in those areas was grayish-white and felt ice-cold. And worse, I began to hear whispers in my head, not my own voice, but others. "Kate," Luke said anxiously, seeing my expression, "are you all right?" I wanted to say yes, but it would be a lie. I was transforming. The infection was spreading, and I didn't know how much time I had before I became one of them. "We have to find our way back to Grace," I said, "and find a way to stop this before it's too late." But as I tried to stand, my legs wouldn't obey. My body felt like loose mud, and my mind began to drift into darkness. The last thing I clearly remembered was Luke calling my name, sounding distant, as if from the end of a deep cave. And then darkness swallowed me. But even in my delirium, I still heard the whispers, and they were talking about Grace. Part 6. I woke up, I don't know how long later, leaning against the trunk of a colossal, centuries-old pine tree. Its rough, damp bark pressed against my blood-soaked clothes. The scent of pine resin mixed with the metallic smell of blood and another horrifying odor, the smell of decay from within my own body. Luke was gone, leaving only a streak of blood on the dry leaves where he had lain and footprints leading back towards the hospital. He had abandoned me. No, not abandoned. He had gone to find help, or at least I hoped so. My mind was blurring, unable to clearly distinguish between reality and illusion. The sky began to shift from pitch black to pale gray. Dawn was approaching, but the first light of morning brought no hope. Instead, it only revealed my horrifying condition more clearly. I looked down at my body and wanted to vomit. The infection had spread throughout my entire upper torso. My skin was grayish-blue like a corpse's, and black, root-like tendrils had crawled up to my neck and one side of my face. From the wounds, viscous black liquid oozed incessantly, forming contaminating streaks on my clothes. But worse than the physical changes was what was happening in my head. I heard voices, not my own, but those of others of the dead. "Kate," a woman's voice, distant as if from underwater. "Kate, you have failed." "No," I whispered, clutching my head in my hands. "I haven't failed. I will save Grace." "You let them out. Now Grace will be like you, like us." I recognized the voice. It was Sarah Chen, a research student who had worked with my father 5 years ago. She had died in a laboratory accident. At least, that's what my father told me. Now I knew the truth. "Sarah," I called out into the cold air. "We are all here, Kate," another male voice echoed. "All who touched it, all who were infected." David Walsh, another lab technician, also died in the accident. "Did Dad kill all of you?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Not killed," my father's voice echoed, but no longer with malice. Now it was filled with pain and regret. "We transformed ourselves to understand it, to find a way to stop it. But I failed. I did, and now it's spreading. It won't stop until it swallows everything." I tried to stand, but my legs felt like cot. My body was slowly shutting down as the infection invaded my internal organs. I could feel my heart beating weakly and erratically. Suddenly, from a distance, I heard the cry of a child. "Grace," I called, hope blossoming in my heart. The crying grew clearer, and I began to drag myself towards the sound. Every step was agony. Black liquid dripped from my wounds onto the ground, leaving a trail. "Mommy, Mommy, I'm scared." It was Grace's voice. She was somewhere in this forest, alone and terrified. I had to find her. Even if my body was disintegrating, even if my mind was collapsing, I had to save Grace. I stumbled through the pine trees, their thorny branches scraping my skin, but I no longer felt pain. The infection had numbed my nervous system. That might be the only good thing in this situation. "Grace, where are you?" I called out. "Mommy, mommy, help me." I followed the crying, but it always seemed to be ahead of me, never getting closer. And gradually I realized something was wrong. The crying was too perfect, too much like Grace, yet there was something mechanical about it, as if it were being played from a speaker. I stopped and listened more closely. Behind Grace's crying, I heard another sound, a low, malicious giggle. "No," I shook my head. "That's not Grace." The crying abruptly stopped, and a terrifying silence fell over the pine forest, broken only by the rustling of the wind through the leaves. And then I saw it, hanging from a high pine branch, something moving. At first, I thought it was a large spider, but looking closer, I realized it was a child, or something that used to be a child. Its body was the size of Grace's, but hideously distorted. Its limbs were abnormally elongated, its skin grayish-white and slimy. Its face, oh God, its face still resembled Grace's, but its eyes had become deep, hollow black sockets. "Mommy," it said in Grace's perfect voice, "why did you let me become like this?" "You're not Grace," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I am Grace, Mommy. I am the Grace you abandoned. I am the Grace you once wanted to escape from." The words pierced my heart like knives because they were true. There were times, on long sleepless nights when Grace cried incessantly from nightmares, that I had thought, just for a fleeting moment, how much easier life would be without her. I began, but couldn't finish the sentence. "Did Mommy think," the creature Grace continued, its voice sweet but venomous, "that she would be freer, happier, without having to worry about me anymore?" "No," I screamed, but my cry echoed in the desolate pine forest. "I love Grace more than my own life." "But you left me at the hospital. You abandoned me to run away, and now I'm infected like you." The creature jumped down from the tree, landing in front of me with a grotesque squelching sound. Up close, I could see even more horrifying details. Its skin wasn't just gray, it was rotting in some places, exposing the bone underneath, and from its mouth, black liquid dripped like saliva. "I want a hug, Mommy," it said, extending its abnormally long arms towards me. I backed away until my back hit the pine tree trunk. "You're not Grace. Grace is safe with Rachel." "Rachel?" the creature laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Rachel is still alive, Mommy. They haven't found the hospital yet, but Grace ran into the forest when she saw the other creatures. Now she's out there somewhere, alone and scared, and they're looking for her." I collapsed at the base of the tree, despair overwhelming my soul. If Grace really was out there, alone in this forest full of monstrous creatures. "It's your fault," the creature Grace continued. "You opened the cellar door, you let them out." "I didn't open the cellar door." "But you left the house, and your absence broke the final seal." The seal, I remembered my father's research, the handwritten notes I had found in his study after he died. They mentioned methods of containment and binding through bloodline. "You used my blood," I whispered, understanding. "When I was little, he often took my blood for health checks. In reality, he used it to create the seal. And when Mommy left the house, the seal weakened. The further Mommy went, the weaker it became. Until Mommy was in these Pine Barrens, it completely broke." I understood what a colossal mistake I had made. By running away, I had inadvertently released these creatures from the basement. I had made everything worse. The creature Grace vanished like smoke, leaving me alone with my guilt and despair. I sat leaning against the tree trunk, letting tears stream down my cheeks, mixing with blood and the black liquid from my wounds. "I failed," I whispered. "I failed you, my daughter." But then, from deep within my mind, another voice echoed. Not the voices of the dead, but my own voice, the strong and brave part of me I thought I had lost. "Not yet. You still have a chance." I looked up as if seeking the source of the voice, and I saw them. The characters carved into the colossal pine tree I was leaning against. Not carved with a knife or metal tool, but with fingernails. And they were highlighted with blood. Runes. My father had written about them in his notes. Symbols that could create bindings and seals, but to be effective, they had to be drawn with the blood of someone with a blood connection to the source of the infection. My blood. With my last ounce of strength, I pulled my hand away from the wound on my shoulder, letting blood and black liquid drip into my palm. The liquid was warm and viscous, smelling of metal and decay. I began to draw on the tree bark, not the characters I had seen in my father's books, but drawings from intuition curves and angles that my infected mind somehow knew. Every stroke was a vow, every drop of blood a commitment. "I will save Grace," I whispered as I drew. "Even if I have to sacrifice my life." The characters began to glow eerily, a cold blue light like moonlight, and I felt something shift in the air around me, as if I had just opened a new door. "I will find a way to stop them," I continued. My blood now flowed freely, and I would avenge all they had done. As I completed the final rune, the blue light spread from the tree bark and seeped into my skin. The pain in my body lessened, and my mind became clearer than ever. I understood what I had to do, and I knew who I had to find for help. Jamie and Rachel. If they were still alive, they would have the answers. Jamie, with his tech knowledge, could understand the nature of the mysterious messages. Rachel, with her psychological expertise, could help me fight against the invasion of my mind. And together, we would find a way to save Grace and stop the spread of this horrifying plague. I stood up from the tree, my body still aching but filled with new strength. The runes on the tree still glowed faintly, like a beacon in the darkness. Part 7. The sun had completely set when I found the underground bunker my father had mentioned in his old notes. It was hidden in a small valley, concealed by dense thickets and a layer of vines that had covered the entrance for years. Only those who knew its exact location could find it. The bunker door was made of thick metal, rusted and corroded but still sturdy. On its surface were carved symbols similar to what I had drawn on the tree bark, but much older and faded. This wasn't a hiding place, this was a place to fight. "Kate," Jamie's voice echoed from behind me. I turned and saw him approaching with Rachel, carrying a large bag full of strange equipment. Jamie Rodriguez looked more exhausted than I remembered. His long dark hair was disheveled and covered in dry leaves, and his gold-rimmed glasses were cracked on one side. But his blue eyes still shone brightly with the determination of a genius solving the most complex problem of his life. Rachel Thompson seemed calmer, but I could see the worry in her deep brown eyes. Her short braids had come loose, and there were a few scratches on her face, signs that they too had encountered the strange creatures. "Luke found us at the hospital," Rachel said quickly. "He told us what happened and we found Grace." My heart skipped a beat. "Grace, where is she? Is she all right?" "She's safe," Jamie replied. "We've hidden Grace in an old bunker not far from here. Luke is there protecting her." Relief washed over me. Grace was safe. There was still hope. "But Kate," Rachel continued, her voice serious, "we don't have much time. Those creatures are spreading. They attacked the hospital, and now they're moving towards the city." "We've analyzed the messages you received," Jamie said, pulling a tablet from his bag. "They're not from any telecommunication network. They're transmitted on a completely different frequency, almost like brainwaves." "Brainwaves?" Rachel explained. "These creatures have telepathic abilities, and they're using that ability to locate and track infected individuals. That's why they always knew where Kate was." I looked down at the wound on my shoulder, where the infection had spread but seemed to have stopped progressing after I drew the runes. "So, how can we stop them?" Jamie opened his bag and pulled out strange equipment, a radio transmitter, antennas, and a tangle of cables. "I've studied your father's notes. He mentioned using interference frequencies to disrupt their communication system. And I've researched the psychology of these creatures," Rachel added. "They operate as a collective mind. If we can create enough interference in their communication system, they'll lose their ability to coordinate." "But to do that," Jamie continued, "we need a location that can amplify the signal, and we need someone who's infected to act as a living antenna." I finished his sentence for him. "That would be me, wouldn't it?" They both remained silent. That gave me my answer. "All right," I said, "let's do this." We opened the bunker door and stepped down. Inside, it was dark and damp, with the smell of metal and old chemicals. Jamie shone his flashlight on the damp concrete walls, which were stained with green mold. But what caught my attention were the symbols carved into the walls. They were identical to what I had drawn on the tree bark, but much more complex and detailed. A network of runes covered the entire space, forming a giant ceiling system. My father prepared this, I whispered. Not just your father, Rachel said, pointing to a corner of the bunker. Look. In the dark corner, we saw a human skeleton leaning against the wall, wearing a faded white lab coat. Beside it was a thick folder and a journal. Jamie picked up the journal and flipped through it. This is Dr. Marcus Henley's, the doctor from the hospital. He died, I asked, though the answer was obvious. He sacrificed himself, Rachel read from the journal. He was infected and came here to complete the work Kate's father had started, but he died before he could activate the system. Jamie placed the equipment down and began connecting them to points on the walls where special symbols were carved. These runes are designed to amplify radio waves and convert them into frequencies that can affect brainwaves. But to activate the system, Rachel said, looking at me with worry, Kate will have to stand in the center and let the infection in her body interact with the runes. What does that mean? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It means the infection will spread faster, Jamie said frankly. You might not survive. I looked around the bunker, seeing barbed wire already strung across the entrances, cans of liquid labeled diluted acid, and a speaker system connected to the transmitter. My father and Dr. Henley had turned this place into a perfect trap. Grace will be safe, I asked. She'll be safe, Rachel assured. And these creatures will be stopped. If everything works as planned, Jamie nodded. I took a deep breath, then let's do it. Jamie finished connecting the equipment while Rachel checked the rune system. From outside, we began to hear the familiar sounds, the clacking of bones. They found us, Rachel said. Perfect, I said. We want them in here. I stood in the center of the bunker, where all the rune lines converged. Jamie handed me a small earpiece. When you're ready, he said, tell us and we'll activate the transmitter. From outside, the tick-tock grew closer. And then, through the crack in the bunker door, I saw glowing eyes in the darkness. They're here, ready, Jamie asked through the earpiece. I looked down at my hands, seeing the black streaks beginning to spread again. My body knew what was coming. Ready, I whispered. And then hell descended. The bunker door burst open, and dozens of creatures poured in like a storm. The barbed wire strung across the entrance was torn apart with ease. Diluted acid sprayed from automatic nozzles, creating acid smoke clouds and gruesome sizzling sounds as they corroded the creature's flesh. But there were still too many of them. Jamie switched on the transmitter, and a horrifying sound erupted, a high-pitched, ear-splitting frequency that made me cover my ears. The creatures stopped, their bodies twitching as if being electrocuted. It's working, Rachel cried out. But then the transmitter began to overload, smoke rising from the circuits, and the sound became unstable. Jamie, the equipment is failing, I yelled. I'm trying. Jamie slammed his hand on the machine, trying to maintain the connection. The creatures recovered and began to rush towards us again. One large one, nearly 4 meters tall, with arms like giant branches, reached its claws towards Rachel. No, I screamed, and at that moment, I felt something change within me. The infection suddenly spread like wildfire, but instead of weakening me, it made me stronger. I could feel the minds of the creatures, as if I had become part of their collective network, and I used that connection. Stop, I commanded, not with my voice but with my mind. All the creatures froze in place. I realized I could control them, at least temporarily. Jamie, I said through the earpiece, my voice starting to sound different. Activate the rune system now. I bet you'll. Just do it. The symbols on the walls began to glow with a cold blue light, and I felt immense power surge through my body. The power of all the creatures in the bunker, amplified and channeled through me. Part 8. The world around me suddenly became a storm of blue light and horrifying sound. The runes on the walls pulsed with energy like lightning, and I stood at the eye of the storm, feeling the electrical current course through every cell of my body. This power was enough to destroy the creatures, but it was also enough to kill me. But before I could complete the ritual, the creatures began to break my control. They weren't just soulless puppets, they possessed their own collective consciousness, and it was fighting back. The tallest creature, the leader with a body made of dozens of fused human bones, let out a piercing shriek. That sound wasn't just a roar, it was a mental assault designed to break my concentration. "Kate," Rachel cried out as she saw me collapse to my knees, blood flowing from my nose and ears. "She can't take much more." Jamie was frantically adjusting the transmitter, trying to find the precise frequency. "I need more time. The system isn't fully synchronized." The smaller creatures began to charge. Barbed wire and diluted acid only slowed them down, unable to stop them completely. Rachel grabbed an iron bar and tried to strike them, but she was a psychiatrist, not a warrior. A creature with a body like a giant spider leaped at her, its sharp claws poised to tear. Rachel screamed and fell backward. And just then, Luke burst into the bunker. "Get out of the way," he yelled, holding a shotgun I didn't know where he got. Boom, the gunshot echoed deafeningly in the confined space. The spider-like creature was blown in half, black liquid splattering everywhere. "Luke," I tried to get up, but maintaining the connection with the rune system was draining my strength. "Where's Grace?" "She's safe. I left her in the bunker with an automated defense system." Luke fired another shot at a different creature. "But you have to finish the ritual. There are hundreds more heading towards the city." Hundreds more, my heart sank, if they reach the populated areas. "Jamie," I yelled, "how much longer?" 2 minutes, I need 2 minutes to fully synchronize." 2 minutes, but the creatures weren't giving us 2 minutes. The leader creature began to move towards me, each step creating cracks in the concrete floor. It was nearly 5 meters tall, its body like a tower of bones with countless arms reaching out from all sides. Its head was a collection of many human skulls, each with needle-sharp teeth. "Morrison family," it said in my father's voice, but from all 5 mouths at once. "We will finally be reunited." "I'm not a Morrison," I screamed, trying to stand firm. "I am Kate Martinez, and I will stop you." Luke continued to shoot, each shot hitting its mark, but only slowing the leader creature down slightly. Its wounds healed rapidly. "You cannot kill me with ordinary weapons," the creature said. "I am evolution, I am the future." It extended a long arm towards Luke. He tried to dodge but was too slow. Its claws raked across his chest, tearing his shirt and leaving deep gashes on his skin. Luke cried out and fell, blood gushing, but he still tried to crawl towards the transmitter. I can help," he gasped. "Luke, don't," I screamed, but it was too late. He gripped the exposed wires on the control panel and began adjusting the dials. Blood from his wounds seeped into the circuits, creating sparks. "If I can increase the power," Luke said with difficulty, "but you have to hold the wires tightly. It might not. You'll be electrocuted to death." "Do you think I don't know that?" Luke smiled weakly, blood dripping from his mouth. "But Grace needs her mother, and the world needs to be saved." The leader creature lunged at me, but by this time Luke had tightly grasped 2 bare electrical wires. "I love you, Kate," he said. "Save our daughter." He pressed the 2 wires together. Crack, a massive bolt of lightning erupted, and the entire system suddenly boosted its power tenfold. The blue light from the runes became blinding white, and the sound from the transmitter became a monstrous roar. Luke was thrown violently backward, his body motionless. "Luke," I screamed, but I couldn't leave my position at the center of the system. And then it happened. The brain waves from the rune system, combined with the tenfold increase in power, created a colossal electromagnetic pulse. It radiated from the bunker like an invisible tsunami, piercing through rock and trees, reaching all creatures within a radius of many kilometers. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The leader creature, charging towards me, suddenly froze mid-stride. All 5 of its skulls simultaneously let out screams of agony, sounds like shattering glass and grinding metal. Its body began to tremble violently. "No, it can't be. We are immortal." But the brain waves were destroying their collective communication system. Each creature lost its connection to the others, and without a collective mind to sustain life, they began to disintegrate. The leader creature was the last to endure. It turned towards me, its ember-like eyes filled with hatred. "If I cannot have my daughter, then no one will." It lunged at me with a final burst of speed, all its arms reaching out as if to embrace me in death. But I was ready. I raised my hands and met the creature. As my hands touched it, the entire energy from the rune system coursed through my body and channeled directly into it. The sound from the leader creature as it died was like an explosion. Its body shattered into thousands of fragments of bone and black liquid, scattering throughout the bunker. And then only silence remained. I collapsed to the floor, my body completely exhausted. The black streaks on my skin had stopped spreading and began to fade. The brain waves had not only destroyed the creatures, they had also purified the infection in my body. Kate, Rachel rushed to my side. She's still alive. Jamie had turned off the transmitter and was checking Luke. His face was worried but held a glimmer of hope. Luke, he's alive. His pulse is very weak, but it's still beating. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. I know, I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks, not tears of sorrow, but of immense relief. He sacrificed himself to save us all. From outside the bunker, we no longer heard the tick-tock, only the sound of the wind blowing through the pine forest and the distant lapping of waves. The battle was over, but this victory came at too great a cost. I looked at Luke one last time. He lay motionless, his face peaceful as if asleep. The man who loved me, who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself, had sacrificed his life so Grace could have a future. You saved the world, I whispered. You saved Grace. And now I had to live to be worthy of that sacrifice. Dawn was coming and Grace was waiting. Part 9. The first rays of dawn pierced through the bunker door like a golden sword, illuminating the remnants of last night's battle. In that warm light, I saw what were once the creature's remains slowly dissipate, crumbling into tiny dust particles and then vanishing completely into the air, as if they had never existed. I lay on the cold concrete floor, my body aching in every inch, but I was alive. Alive now held an entirely new meaning for me. It wasn't just breathing and a beating heart, but the chance to continue loving, to continue protecting, to continue living for what mattered most. Kate, Rachel's voice was gentle, full of worry. How is she? Jamie was kneeling beside Luke, checking his pulse. After a moment, he looked up with a mixture of surprise and relief. He's alive. His pulse is very weak, but it's still beating. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. I felt my heart release from an iron grip. Luke was alive. Despite his severe injuries, despite the possibility of many surgeries, he still had a chance. With Rachel's help, I struggled to sit up. My body felt as though it had been run over by a truck, but the black streaks of infection had faded significantly. My skin in the affected areas was now its normal pale pink, though some small scars remained. Grace, I gasped. I need to see Grace. We'll go now. We will, Jamie assured me, as he and Rachel together carried Luke onto a makeshift stretcher made from coats and wooden poles. We emerged from the underground bunker into the beautiful dawnlight. The Pine Barrens now looked completely different, no longer terrifying and eerie, but serene and natural, like any other forest. There were no strange tick-tock sounds, no tall, slender figures moving among the trees, only the sound of birdsong and a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves. The bunker where Grace was located wasn't far, an old military structure from World War II that Jamie had converted into an emergency shelter. As we approached, the thick steel door automatically opened, and Grace ran out. Mommy, Mommy! I knelt and hugged her tightly, feeling the small warmth of her body, the familiar scent of her soft blonde hair. Grace cried hysterically, her tears soaking my shirt. I was so scared, Mommy, Grace said between sobs. I thought you wouldn't come back. You promised to protect me. I whispered into her ear, and I will always keep my promise. As I looked at her to check if Grace was hurt or frightened, I noticed something different about myself. The vision in my left eye had significantly blurred, not completely blind, but seeing through a thick fog. It was a lingering effect from last night's battle. Are you okay, Mommy? Grace asked, noticing me blinking repeatedly. It's nothing, sweetie. Mommy's just a little tired. But as I tried to stand, the pain from my left shoulder made me bite my lip to keep from groaning. The wound, though the infection had stopped, had left permanent damage. I could feel numbness spreading from my arm and knew that I might never regain full mobility. We need to get Luke to the hospital, Rachel said, checking his condition, and Kate needs to be examined too. To the roar of the SUV's engine, which Jamie had parked near the bunker, we left the Pine Barrens. Grace sat beside me, her tiny hand clutching mine as if fearing I would disappear. Luke lay on the back seat, breathing weakly but steadily. As we drove past the road where we had fled the monstrous creatures last night, I saw everything had returned to normal. No strange fog, no deformed trees, just a peaceful country road in the morning sun. "It's all over now, isn't it, Mommy?" Grace asked, looking out the window. "Yes, my dear," I replied, gently stroking her hair. "The monsters are gone." But just as I said that, my phone in my pocket vibrated. I took it out with trembling hands, fearing another emergency message. On the screen appeared a message from an unknown number. "Your mind is still vulnerable." My heart pounded, but looking closer, I realized this wasn't a threatening message. It was a reminder. Perhaps from my father, or from Dr. Henley, or from someone else who had experienced what I had just gone through. Even though the creatures were destroyed, even though the infection had been purified, the memories and psychological trauma remained. I knew that in the nights to come, I would wake up with nightmares. I knew that small noises would startle me. I knew that complete physical and mental recovery would take a long time. But I also knew that I wasn't alone. I had Grace, I had Luke if he recovered, I had Rachel and Jamie. I had loved ones who were ready to help me get through it. "Mommy, are we going home?" Grace asked. I looked towards my father's old house as we passed it. The basement was now empty. The horrifying secrets had been exposed and destroyed. Perhaps I would sell that house and move somewhere else, a place without painful memories. "We'll find a new home," I said, "a safe and happy place for our family." Grace nodded and leaned against my shoulder. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, more than my own life." As the SUV headed towards the hospital, I looked out the window and saw the world awakening. Local residents were starting their day, completely unaware that they had just been saved from a terrible catastrophe. Children went to school, adults went to work, life continued as normal. And that was the most wonderful thing, a normal life. A life without monsters, without horror, without threats from other dimensions. I deleted the last message and turned off my phone. Though my mind was still vulnerable, though I still had to face the consequences of last night, I knew I was strong enough to overcome it. I had survived. Grace had survived. Luke was fighting to survive. And that was enough. That was more than enough. The dawn continued to shine, and we drove towards the future. A future finally liberated from the ghosts of the past.